Good day, everyone, and thanks for listening to Kansas City's Northeast Newscast. I'm your host, Paul Thompson, and this week I'll be joined by Ana Ramirez, the latest Americorps VISTA housed at the Mattie Rhodes Center in the historic Northeast. So you might be wondering, what is an Americorps VISTA? And, thankfully, I pulled up a little snippet from their website to explain the program and what their goals are. VISTA, Volunteers in Service to America, was conceived by President John F. Kennedy as a domestic counterpart to the Peace Corps and was started by President Lyndon Johnson as part of the War on Poverty. The first VISTAs began working in 1965 in migrant farm worker camps in California, the hollows of eastern Kentucky, and the urban neighborhoods of Hartford, Connecticut. In 1994, VISTA was incorporated into the Americorps network of programs. Today, Americorps VISTA is as vibrant and necessary as ever. So that's the language that the program's official website uses to describe the work that it does. But to be frank, Ana does a much better job of describing what it's like day to day in the historic Northeast. In our 30-minute discussion, Ana comes off as thoughtful, determined, and engaged, though she's clear from the outset that she's not here with a cape or a magic wand. She hasn't been sent to Kansas City to serve as the catalyst for change. Rather, she's here to find the catalyst for change and to help empower them in their own communities. In our conversation, I talked to Ana about how she got involved in the Americorps VISTA program, how she ended up in Kansas City, what her initial impressions were when she arrived, and how they've changed over the course of her first few months in the area, what projects she's been working on since she arrived, and what she hopes to accomplish over the next 8 months, and much more. What follows is my conversation with Americorps VISTA Ana Ramirez. Thanks for listening.
Are we on?
All right, yeah.
Now we are. Okay.
Paul Thompson here at the Mattie Rhodes Center, sitting across from Ana Ramirez. She's the Americorps VISTA. This is where she's stationed, but we're going to learn a little bit more about why she's here, what she's doing in the Northeast, and what her impressions have been of the area. So thank you very much for joining us today, Ana. How are you?
Doing really well. Glad to be here.
Excellent. I'll just jump right into it.
Yeah.
I think for people who haven't met you or don't really understand what this program's all about, maybe I should just start by asking you, What is an Americorps VISTA?
Absolutely. So Americorps VISTA, it's many people have heard of the Peace Corps. It's so in some ways you can imagine Americorps VISTA as the domestic version of the Peace Corps, where students who have recently graduated from college or a couple of years after graduation just kind of want to put their talents, use, and energy to something that's good for the community. So Americorps VISTA was was created after, I think, during President Kennedy's term in office, and VISTA stands for Volunteer in Service to America. So one of the things that really differentiates VISTA from some of the other programs, it really focuses on capacity building. So we're not here just to, save the world, to to be the person in the forefront. We're more here to kind of be more in the background and find who are people who can step up and be leaders in the community, and how is it that we can take the skills and knowledge that we have learned and how can we pass it on. So it's kind of this idea of sustainability, and as it is in the name, this kind of volunteer in service to America, and just kind of working with communities here, and particularly like low-income communities.
Well, and that's an interesting point, because the thing to point out, I think, is that it is a temporary assignment. I think you'll be here for a year.
Yeah, it's a year.
So I think you kind of spoke to it there. The idea is you identify people in the community who are already here, who are already maybe somewhat active,
Absolutely.
but kind of encouraging them to become even more active and to, I guess, become the change that they want to see, or to become the lightning rod for change that they want to see in their own communities. Right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Well, cool. And if you could just maybe describe how you got involved a little bit. When did you first hear about the VISTA program?
Yeah. So after graduation, I graduated in 2015. I had friends who were doing VISTA. I didn't apply at the time just because I knew that I wanted to go to Guatemala. My path was going more abroad. So I had friends who were involved in VISTA, and I saw their experience online on social media, and it just seemed a very impressive experience, and a lot of people seem to get a lot out of it, just because I know that after graduation, a lot of folks can be kind of confused on what do I do now, or how do I really give back in the community after being 4 years in this institution.
Why aren't the offers just pouring in right now?
Exactly, yeah. So So after being in Guatemala, I don't know. I guess I just didn't want to.
What were you doing in Guatemala?
I was a
teacher.
teacher.
You don't mind me asking? Oh, really?
No, yeah, I was a teacher. I was a teacher, and also, so my background is I'm Native American, but it's a tribe from Guatemala. So I was learning my ancestral language and also teaching English. So my idea has always been like, if I'm going to give, not just taking from the community, but giving back. So I was giving these English lessons at a middle school, but I was also learning my ancestral language.
Right. It was a give and take, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent.
And so I did work in Guatemala, and I loved it, but I felt like I want to do similar work in the United States. So I looked through different programs, and VISTA just really stood out to me. Like I said, it's this idea of, kind of volunteering service to America, but it's not like service in terms of like I have had folks who really like to see themselves as the savior or the person who comes to help everybody.
Right. It's
but
not really how that stuff
works.
That's
not how it works. It's kind of more, I think it's more effective if you really just humble yourself down and just try to, in terms of sustainability, just find the people who can really make it happen and know that you're not going to be the change maker, but you can help people move themselves forward along. And that's what I wanted from this.
Sort of the weekend warrior type deal. People come in there on the, swoop in once a week, and then we'll do this together.
Yeah,
and then you go back home out to the suburbs. And
I know, right?
So,
and they post a lot of pictures on social media. So people
right.
are like,
it's like
yes.
you were there for 22 minutes. You make it seem like you built that house yourself.
Yeah.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
And I can understand why you would try to avoid that. But,
yes, absolutely.
Well, and so did you have a chance to talk to some people who had participated in the program before you joined up, or did you just jump in with both feet?
Yeah, I just kind of dived in head first. I had my friends who did it, and I was always in communication with them during their service year, so I didn't know a little bit of the expectations.
Right.
But in some ways, like this whole VISTA, like me joining VISTA was kind of serendipitous, because I started applying in July, and then I was brought in Guatemala for a bit. My grandma was sick, so I visited her, and I came back really late in August. The application was due in like a week, and I was like, okay, can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Then I got this email from Mary Sear at the Mattie Rhodes Center. It's like, we're looking for this person, bilingual, working with this population, and basically everything that she listed was what I was looking for exactly. So I sent in my application, and then she was like, we want you to be here, and then 1 week later I moved out.
How did she get your contact information?
I don't know. No, that's the thing, because it was like the only VISTA email I've ever gotten. The only thing. And I think it was like,
had you joined a mailing list or something prior, at least?
No.
I mean, are they just like, she pulling you out of a hat?
No, like I started my application, and I think I put my email down. And I think she was very judicious, so she like...
was just looking through the candidates?
She looked through the database, and she like narrowed it down to like bilingual, college educated, and some other stipulations. So like I think she told me she like emailed like 2,000 people, and out of those names, like out of those 2,000 emails, it came to me in North Carolina, after I came back from Guatemala, so I just applied to it. And I thought VISTA was gone. Like, I didn't think I could do it anymore because I missed my chance. Yeah, because I came back.
But you kind of, like, had a workaround there because you got contacted directly, right?
Yeah, so it was very serendipitous, very much so. And I really love my time here, hence my sweatshirt of Kansas City. I really like it here.
It being an audio format, it's...
I know.
Yeah, it's a picture of a map of the United States on a T-shirt with a heart right over the Kansas City area.
Exactly, the heart of America, no?
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, then, how much direction did you get before being embedded somewhere? Then, I mean, you get the email from Mary. How much did you get to talk to her beforehand?
Yeah.
What was that situation like?
No,
how long was
absolutely.
it? I guess. Can you describe that period between when you first got that email from Mary and then you said, "Okay, I'm in," and signed on the dotted line, so to speak?
Okay, absolutely. So I got the email, and it was kind of sending your resume and writing samples, so they know kind of your abilities. So I got the email. I responded immediately, like 2 hours later, and then she got back to me like later in the evening, was like, I want to interview you. I really like your application. So the next day, I think that we interviewed, and then after that, it was another interview with Mary and John, the CEO at Mattie Rhodes. And then it was just me constantly talking to Mary about what about my questions about the area, what's it like, and then I also got the phone number of the VISTA last year, Michelle Hatch. So I had a long conversation with her. So because the more I learned about it, the more interested I was. So I just kind of kept the conversations going, because if I'm really going to commit to something, I really need to know what's kind of are the expectations and if it's a good fit for me. But the more I heard about this area here in the Northeast, the people involved, the diversity of the area, I just became more, interested, which is why after I got notified that, I'm in, they want me to be here, I moved out 1 week later.
And you moved from where?
North Carolina.
So you were in North Carolina, and that's where you went to school?
I went to school in Rhode Island.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There you go. And what school was it?
Yeah, I went to Brown University.
Oh, excellent. Cool.
Yeah.
And you essentially... So you were back in North Carolina by this time, though?
Yep, I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you had a conversation with Michelle, and what did she tell you?
Yeah, she just kind of told me what it's like, the day-to-day, working with the communities, the importance of capacity building, and particularly that I'll be with lichens and Indian mounds. So she kind of told me a little bit about, I guess, the people who are involved, the personalities, what she does, and, and then just kind of like that kind of back and forth, just me asking these questions and also just kind of figuring out what it's like, and also just figuring out the living situation, because I didn't know anybody here. That's kind of one of the reasons I moved here, because I was born in California, grew up in North Carolina, went to school in Rhode Island. So it's very much been like north, east, west.
Right.
But Midwest is something I don't really know. So it's kind of that draw, just getting to know more people. And the fact that, problems with poverty and diverse communities, these aren't isolated communities. This happens in California, this happens in North Carolina, happens in Rhode Island. So I was just very much drawn to see, what are the similar problems, and in some ways not think about it in isolation, but what are the similar situations that we can figure out together was kind of one of the things I was interested in.
Interesting. So she didn't throw you for a loop. She was accurate with her description of the experience?
Yeah, she was, yeah. And, So I moved here like a week after I found out, but I didn't have to do that. I started on September 12th, but I moved here like August 28th.
Oh, okay.
So I moved here a little over a week, or I think it was maybe later. I think it was like September 1st. I don't remember. Okay. But I moved here like a week and a half earlier before I started, because for me, if I'm really going to do this work, build community, build capacity, then I really need to know the community and need to know who the people are. So I moved here a week early before I actually had to work, because I wanted to kind of figure out myself in the city, in the community. I moved here a week early, and certain things, like, for example, I had this Native American background, so I went to the Native American Center, began to make friends there. I identify myself as Catholic, so I found out a Catholic church here in the Northeast, in Sheffield. And just because for me, this idea of community is something I take very seriously. It has to be a very genuine relationship. It can't just be because I'm my VISTA year, so I'm just going to, do it Monday through Friday.
Right.
Like, for me, it has to be this kind of lifestyle, this way of being.
You're not really unplugging on the weekends, so to speak?
No, not really. I'm always here during the weekends, too. I mean, I do my shopping on, Gringo Loco or like Mercado Fresco, because that's where I find my cultural foods. And on Sundays, I go to Sheffield. So I'm always here.
Well, I guess that kind of ties into the question I was going to ask you next about what were those initial impressions of the historic Northeast when you got here?
Yeah, absolutely.
And how have those maybe altered over the course of your first several months here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I moved here a week and a half earlier, and I started getting to know people not only in the Northeast, but also outside of the Northeast. So I was, I don't know, I think a lot of people who don't come by the Northeast have these kind of misconceptions about it. They just think it's just very much driven by poverty and just certain items that I feel like they don't really understand. And yes, of course, there are certain problems that one encounters here, but I don't think that's fair to describe the whole place.
Right. Just
because, there is this historic component, and I find that a lot of people don't seem to know about that outside of here.
No, I find that when I talk to some of my friends,
yeah.
like, wait, where is that again?
Absolutely.
And you have to, explain by neighborhood exactly where it is. So it's, downtown, and then you go, 20 blocks east.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it seems like, I don't know, just with some of the different conversations I had, a lot of people don't seem to try to make the effort to come out here. And, and there's just a lot of great stuff. I mean, you can walk down Independence and pass down, different stores that are super diverse. And, where else are you going to see that at? I guess you could say the city market, but that doesn't even compare to kind of what we have here.
Yeah.
So, but, the misconceptions people were telling me, I just didn't let myself be carried away by that. Just because, I grew up in communities that had that people who were outsiders had misconceptions about, but it wasn't the reality. Right. So, I just kind of okay, yeah, sure, that's what people think. But, I just never really let that describe my experience here. And, and as I kind of got more involved, it seems like, I don't know, there's a lot of pride that Northeast has for being here, historic component, the diversity. And last month I was doing focus groups at the high school, Northeast High School,
Sure.
and a lot of the kids talked about, feeling very proud of the languages and diversity. And, it's just, I don't know, you see that all the time. And I think it's one of the great things that we have here, that it's not just bicultural, Hispanic or white or black. It's just also all these other people from different countries, who are, I guess, refugee folks as well. But they bring all of this culture, too.
And that is one of the things that has impressed me with the Northeast. Since, I've only been working down here for a couple of years myself. But when I found out that, Della Lamb does a lot of refugee resettlement around here, and I got a chance to meet some people, and they're super impressive,
Right?
And I think that's humbling too,
Absolutely.
And to have all those preconceived notions maybe kind of dissolve as you learn and meet new people is you can't really. It's an experience that's definitely worth having, and
Absolutely.
I think it just makes everybody a little bit more aware of their surroundings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I also wanted to ask about the greater Kansas City metropolitan area. What were you expecting, and what did you see when you got here?
To be quite frank, I didn't know anything about the Midwest. The only thing I really imagined was cornfields and cows.
It's funny you said that.
No, but I mean, it was kind of on the drive here, especially from St. Louis to Kansas City. You do see some of that, but I was just very impressed. It's a very beautiful city. I think I talk about diversity a lot, but I think I talk about it because I really love it.
Wow.
I didn't know Kansas City also that they have really great barbecue. I didn't know that.
Have you decided on any favorites yet?
No, well, I mean, I really like Gates.
Yes.
Gates is pretty great.
So good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be my winner. But I still I actually have a bucket list of things I want to do here, so kind of.
What else is on there, if you don't mind?
There's
asking?
a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I wish I had it with me, but
My bucket list is 75% food related.
Really?
So yeah.
Yeah, I think mine is probably around the same.
Yeah. So I understand that, but it's funny you mentioned cows and cornfields, because I moved to the Kansas City area.
Yeah.
From actually overseas in 6th grade.
Oh, okay.
And I was, I had these super vivid memories of me thinking about what it was going to be like, and definitely there's definitely corn and a barn in the background. It's funny that you brought that up, because I had that exact same impression when I first came here, and then I'm like, oh,
yeah,
all right, well, I'm an idiot. But,
I think a lot of other people think that, but upon coming here, it's very much a pleasant surprise.
Or they've all seen Wizard of Oz. And
I know. I was actually going to say the same thing.
Right. Yeah. Right. We all.
Yeah.
Funny how these impressions are formed, and
I know. Right. Yeah.
And obviously, the reality is. And maybe if you go to the right places, you might be able to find that, to fit that into that little impression.
The whole stereotype.
But, exactly. There's definitely going to be some farms if you go a few miles outside of the city. But, I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you as well about some of the projects that you worked on, or that you've been working on since you've been here. Mm-hmm. The first time I met you was at a cleanup.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
It was over at, I think it was Likens Park. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of a group of high school kids that come around, and we're just picking up trash around the area.
Yep.
And so that was the first time I had a chance to encounter you. But what else have you been doing over the course of these first few months?
Absolutely. So a lot of what I do is mainly working with Indian Mound and lichens. Admittedly, my last 4 months has been mainly with lichens. So, for example, last year they had the Neighborhood Rising Fund. So it's, a grant that helps build capacity in neighborhoods. So they got the grant, and what their, I think, project was called was marketing and engagement initiative. So it was just kind of working with them in designing marketing materials. And for me, kind of as I mentioned, it's important for me to be more in the background, not let myself kind of just, be the one who kind of just takes over.
You don't want to be the driving force, because then when you're gone, there's a vacuum.
Exactly. So one of the projects I was working with them was just kind of designing these marketing materials. There was someone in Likens, her name's Cheryl. She's really awesome. So she had an interest in kind of getting the designs up and going. So she got her designs, but folks wanted it expressed that they wanted it to look a little more different, just being to change it. So I took her designs and I showed it to my friend Donna from Indian Mound, and since she has more experience in doing more design, she was able to edit it. And then, so it's just kind of in conversation, connecting people, rather than me just going in and designing the whole thing and being done with it. It was just more, letting people step up and show, let their talents kind of be to the forefront.
Right.
So it was just kind of working with them on that level. So that's kind of, I guess, something that I've been working on with Lichens, and we've been able to just kind of do yard signs, door hangers, like a big banner, and just a lot of different items. So that's just something more specific in regards to that neighborhood.
These are like promotional materials for the neighborhood?
Yeah, this is
stuff
for
that they would put on their website or something of that nature?
Yeah, it's for the Lichens Neighborhood Association, just because they want to increase the attendance of that. So that's kind of more specific to the neighborhood, but something else is just kind of working with with Mary, with the Northeast Alliance together. In November, there was a meeting where a lot of, community leaders have expressed, youth aren't engaged, and sometimes this can lead them to be involved in maybe illicit activity or doing things in the community that can be harmful sometimes. So that kind of prompted a conversation with my supervisor, Mary, and we had this idea of doing focus groups at the high school. So at Mattie Rhodes, we have someone who works at Northeast High School. So I was able to get to know teachers and talk to the principal, and they got the idea approved. And the whole idea of this project was to really get to know where the students are coming from, what are their interests, what is it that they want to see happen, or, to answer the question, do they have enough activities, a little, or they don't want anything else.
And why not? Right?
Yeah, and, why not? Yeah, so it was going to be a focus group initially, just kind of asking these questions with a group of, maybe 10 to 12 kids at the high school. So it was, how it happened is, so I reached out to the principal, he approved it, then I reached out to send an email to all the teachers, and I was very pleasantly surprised by how many teachers wanted me to come in and talk to their to their students.
You went to the full class.
So, what was that experience like? Yeah, it was really great. I found the teachers were very receptive to it, and I was very excited to see that. And whenever I spoke to the kids about the project, they too seemed very excited. They had a lot to say. And initially, I thought I was aiming for maybe like 75 students to talk to, but a lot of teachers got back to me, and I spoke to 197 students. Dang. And yeah, it was. I didn't expect that turnout, but it was very amazing. And like I said, originally it was just going to be focus groups, but because a large amount of students, I decided to also include it with the survey, so that way, just because I remember being a student, there's always the students who are very loud, very vocal, and you have the students who are just shy and who have great ideas but don't say anything. Right. So I kind of did a two-pronged approach, so that way the students who maybe don't want to speak up have an opportunity just to write it down. So yeah, it was just kind of doing this project of really getting to know the kids, and just because the community leaders were proposing ideas or projects that they maybe could offer to the kids. But, I think if we really want something to work, it's important for it to be a dialogue, no?
And the community leaders aren't teenagers. So,
yeah. And I know some of them, not to offend anybody, but they're talking about their experiences as teenagers in 1980. Right. But the demographics has changed in 2018 now, so it's important to see where they're coming from. And, so, yeah, it was just kind of going to the teachers, mainly speaking to the students and just talking about them, what those interests are, what do they want to see happen, what do they like about the neighborhood the way it is, not trying to change anything, just so that way we can kind of bring that into dialogue too with the community leaders, so it really does feel more as this conversation rather than kind of like this one-way street. Right. If that makes sense.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So
what kind of can you cite any examples of kind of what that feedback looked like in terms of were there any wide themes that kind of played out over the course of those 190 plus surveys that you had filled out?
Well, I guess it's important for me to say, so I'm still in the process of kind of synthesizing all that information. That's actually what I've been working on yesterday, and I will begin to do the same, continue the work next week. So I can't really speak much about it,
I'm keeping you from that work right now. So
yeah,
I apologize
exactly.
For that.
You should. Yeah. But I gladly share it with Northeast News if you are all very interested in hearing what that information
about. I think it would be interesting
to
maybe put together a graphic or something of that nature that would can sort of speak to what the students are actually saying. And I know so often when you have these type of conversations about what the young kids, what the youth are up to these days and what they're interested in. That's one of the things that sometimes is missing is feedback from them,
Absolutely.
Which is kind of crazy to think about, but I think that's a valuable commodity is feedback, and I think I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, I agree. That would be great.
Well, what's next on the docket? Whenever you get done doing this interview and then get to go back to your work, what do you got going?
Yeah, so, as a VISTA, we have 2 mandatory service days since MLK Day is on Monday. Later today, I think at 12:30, I would be meeting with all of the VISTAs, and probably around 20 to 25 25 possibly.
In the Kansas City area?
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll be meeting at a community garden. It's in Kensington Avenue, so it's kind of more south. So we'll be there doing working from like 12:30 to 4:30, and so that'll be later today. But I guess it's just going to be, as I said, just after this interview, just continue that work with the
interminable
focus
interview.
group.
Yeah, I know.
So it's just kind of that. And I was just always trying to figure out ways to be engaged and really just get to know the community a lot better. I think that's something that's just very important to me. Just I don't know. So I'm actually I love research, and I really love to get to know people. So I think it'll be pretty great to see what it is that all the kids had to say from all of, I guess, the surveys and the focus groups.
So you've still got 6 months, 5-6 months?
No, I have 8 months.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Time flies.
Yeah.
But if somebody does, somebody wants to reach out, somebody wants to partner with you on something, what's the best way for them to reach you? Can you take direct, can you just, I guess, have discourse with the community like that? If somebody wanted to call you up here and say, I have this idea, is that something that you can just put into action, or at least get to work on in terms of organization and things of that nature? Or is there direction that comes from above mostly?
Right. It seems like a lot
kind
of
of
the
a convoluted
projects,
question. But
No, I understand.
Yeah.
So a lot of the work that I do is very much dependent on what it is that I hear at Likens or Indian Mound, if it's specific to both of these neighborhoods. But it's also dependent on the community leader meetings that happen once a month, and what it is that afterwards Mary and I have a discussion about what are action terms that need to happen, what are things that we need to do. So in some ways, yes, it's kind of very much community oriented. So I guess I don't see any harm in just really knowing what it is that maybe people want to see happen in terms of projects. I am currently more limited to working more with, I guess, Indian Mound and Likens, but I do know that in the future that there is hope to have a VISTA in other neighborhoods too, so that way the work I'm doing can be replicated in other places. But because currently it's just more specific to 2 neighborhoods. But I'm always grateful and excited to hear about what what residents have to say and what they want to see happen. And I don't know, it's possible that maybe some of those goals, missions, projects may align with the work I'm actually doing right now.
Right. And it does seem like there is some emphasis on being flexible day to day, week to week, month to month, so that you can kind of engage in a project that maybe you hadn't considered or that sort of springs up as a matter of circumstance throughout the neighborhood.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to ask you about being bilingual and how important that was. You mentioned at the top of the interview that Mary Sear had sought you out primarily for that reason, or at least in part for that reason.
Right.
And I know she told me in the past before that she was also impressed with your resume.
Oh.
So, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
But how has that ability to communicate to individuals who maybe don't have as much of a voice in the community, typically speaking, how's that benefited you?
Right, absolutely. So I know that one of the reasons being bilingual is very important was because the 2 neighborhoods I'm working with, Likens and Indian Mound, they have a very high percentage of Latino residents in their area. I think it's around 50% for both of these neighborhoods. So knowing that as a VISTA I'd be working in predominantly these 2 neighborhoods, it was very important for, I guess, me and I guess another future VISTA to have that ability, just so that way, just kind of be conducive to conversation and relationship building, just because I do know that Indian Mound Neighborhood Association and Likens Neighborhood Association have both expressed to me that they want to increase the participation of their Latino neighbors. So it would be very difficult to do that kind of engagement if I was monolingual, if I only spoke English, just because, just language is really essential to make that happen. And it's just kind of really important to, I guess, whenever I'm talking to people, being able to express the same thing I'm doing in English, expressing that in Spanish, and finding ways to connect with people. And I know that's kind of something that is kind of also, I guess, in the works that I'm hoping to continue working on this year, I guess, until the end of my VISTA service, increasing that number and just kind of making folks aware of this opportunity to be involved in neighborhood associations, because I know that the participation is low. But at the same time, I think it's important to know that even though maybe there isn't a lot lot of Latino engagement at these neighborhood associations that they're very impressive in how they organize themselves. I go to the church in Sheffield, Our Lady of Peace, and sometimes I go to Holy Cross, which is here in Indian Mound, and it's very impressive that sometimes they do like events on Sundays and they have a huge turnout, and sometimes even bigger than the community events that are hosted by neighborhood associations.
Right.
And I remember once there was like a month where they had one event on Sunday and they had another one the next Sunday. So it was like back-to-back events with huge turnout with food and culture. And so, it's kind of understanding that maybe their organization or they organize themselves at their church. So in some ways, like how is it that we can build this relationship perhaps with the faith-based communities, or how is it that we can think outside of the box to
meet
really
them in their
reach
comfort zone instead of having them come to your neighborhood associations.
Yeah, just kind of thinking creatively and critically of how we can do that. So, I think it's kind of just being bilingual, and in some ways also for me being bicultural, it just really would help really facilitate that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways, maybe Sundays are a good time to reach out, because neighborhood association meetings happen on weekdays most of the time.
That's true.
People have families. It's hard for them to peel away for a meeting, especially if they don't know what they're getting into. You're kind of going in there sort of blind, and hoping that maybe you can get something out of it. But on Sundays, you're already at the church.
Yeah.
You're with family. You're already planning on doing that, and maybe you can reach people in their own comfort zone. And and in that situation, there might be an opportunity for some substantial dialogue. But have you had any specific conversations with non-English speaking individuals who have expressed concerns about what they're seeing or how they're represented in the community?
There's a lot of concerns about what's going on in the community. It can be mainly dealing with maybe illicit activity that's happening in a house near on their block, or I guess some of the shootings that they hear by if they kind of live near Gladstone as well, and just kind of a lot of the similar, I guess, problems that are echoed at the neighborhood associations are similar, but at the same time, they can be very different too, just because I guess their experience as, I guess, Latinos very much kind of, I guess it can lead them to have just very distinct problems compared to folks who maybe are non-Spanish speaking and maybe just not Latino at all. So, but yeah, it's just kind of having those conversations, and whenever I guess I am with these neighborhood associations, just trying to bring those up as well, just because it's kind of important to have that awareness too. But I think more important than having that awareness is having that accessibility, just having folks know about what's available here, and if they do want to participate, then it's readily accessible. So so it's kind of like I said, I'm still kind of working with the neighborhood associations on how we envision kind of increasing the number of, I guess, Latino residents participating, but however it is, I will definitely be there at these meetings to serve as an interpreter if it's necessary.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Well, inevitably there's always going to be some overlap on that Venn diagram, right? And you just got to find those areas where that overlap exists and build from there, I think. So. Yeah. Well, interesting. I know I promised I'd be under 30. We're a little bit over, but I appreciate you taking the time. And I will get out of your hair and let you get back to those surveys and working on that data. But I do appreciate it, and thanks very much for sitting down and talking with us today.
Yeah, you too. It was great.
This has been another edition of Kansas City's Northeast Newscast. Thank you once again to Ana Ramirez of the Americorps VISTA program for joining us this week. Join us next time as we tell more stories for the people of Northeast Kansas City.